Welcome to the Rainy Day Rabbit Holes podcast, your escape from the mundane.
Dive into the rich history of the Pacific Northwest with us and let your mind wander down the rabbit hole.
Because in the Northwest, it's always raining something weird. I am Shea.
And I'm Jody. Let's fall down the rabbit hole. Welcome, listeners, to a journey into where history's shadows come to life, maybe ghost life, and we unravel the secrets that time tried to bury, quite literally. Today, we're delving into a place that's as mysterious as it is infamous, a place where reality is often blurred with madness, and where some of Washington State's darkest stories unfolded. That's right, folks. We're talking about Winston State Hospital.
Boom, boom, boom.
Now, before you start imagining a spooky old asylum from a horror movie, let me assure you that is exactly what this is. Because Winston State Hospital has a history filled with enough drama, scandal, and intrigue to rival even the creepiest.
Bum, bum, bum.
Okay. I didn't finish the sentence. I just stopped. I'm trying to be dramatic here. It's throwing me off. Filled with enough drama, scandal, and intrigue to rival even the creepiest Hollywood script. So buckle up, because we're about to take a journey through the past, exploring the eerie hallways and scandalous secrets of this iconic institution. Are you ready? Dun, dun, dun. There's a couple dun, dun, dun. There's at least one more. Okay, our story begins in the late 19th century, a time when the world was just starting to think seriously about mental health. But let's be honest, the methods back then were not far off from when we used to revive people by blowing smoke up their arse.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's where blowing smoke up your ass comes from.
Okay.
So I got to tell the tale.
Please tell the tale. I want to know more.
So in the 17th century,
That'd be the
1600s.
Thank you.
They thought, mostly in drownings, they tried this. So somebody would be dead, so they thought, or unconscious. Anyway, so they would fill up bellows. You know what bellows are?
Yeah, like to blow
on the fire.
Your fire to get it to,
So they'd fill that up with smoke and stick it up the rectum and blow smoke up. Now, some of these people weren't actually dead, so they did wake up.
Yeah, somebody jams a tube up your ass and starts pumping air in there.
So the conclusion was, this works. Even, you know where I learned this story? And I did verify it. I learned this story when I was working at the ICU at a teaching hospital. And so every morning, and I loved it, the attendings would round with the residents. And I would learn so much, because for like 30 minutes, they would discuss your patient and what was happening and what would need to happen. And one day, this poor resident made a suggestion, and the attending had really dry humor, and he was kind of condescending. He's like, "Oh, that idea reminds me of something. Let me tell you a story." And he tells this story, basically making the poor guy look stupid for suggesting whatever it was. I don't remember, but I do remember the tale.
Can you imagine too, like after they do that, just the farts, just Evan Rude.
Fart and smoke was,
oh my God, yeah. Would smoke come back out of your butt?
I doubt. I bet it got absorbed, but God, that would be amazing. Maybe the first few farts.
I wonder if you could get high that way if you did pot smoke.
I wonder.
Pot smoke up somebody's ass.
I wonder, because you do absorb, people put all sorts of things, like alcohol. Some people do this as a weight loss way to drink if you're trying to lose weight. They use alcohol in enema form. We probably shouldn't tell people this just in case. But anyway, this is not
be good for your
recommended.
No.
You can die quite easily, because it just goes right into your system. There's no liver.
Yeah.
It just gets absorbed right in.
Right.
It doesn't go through your stomach, I should say.
To do all the breakdown process that your stomach does. It just goes right into your bloodstream.
And it goes right into your bloodstream, sorry. And then it does go to your liver, but it doesn't break down in the stomach.
So what I read, and this could be totally wrong, is that, this is something that cancer patients will do a lot of times when they need the appetite stimulation and pain suppression of THC, but they don't want the psychotropic effects. I have read that putting it up your rectum or in your vagina is a way to bypasses the psychotropic effects.
Fascinating. I've not heard that.
Let's look into it more. Would you like to stick some weed up your butt?
No.
Oh, come on.
No.
Oh, come on. Do it for science.
Per rectum, PR. That's how we document in nursing. Per rectum.
Join a study. Come on.
No. I mean, I would join the study from a researcher's standpoint, but not
Not the getting weed suppositories.
not patient zero. Okay, going on to the story. Western State Hospital, originally named Insane Asylum of Washington Territory at Steilacoom, opened its doors in 1871 before Washington became a state. That happened in 1889. It was built on the grounds of an old military fort, Fort Steilacoom. This was to save money. It was very, very expensive to take care of the patients, right? In order to come up with a place to put them all, it would have been very expensive to start from the ground. So they acquired this old military fort that was no longer being used. It had 800 beds and 2,500 employees. And back then, the idea was to create a safe haven for those struggling with mental illness, a place where they could receive care and treatment away from the chaos of the outside world. It was referred to as a place for the unfriended insane.
Unfriended insane. I want that on a t-shirt.
Yes.
Unfriended insane.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that's another one. Maybe it's another band name.
Unfriended insane.
Yeah.
AKA wandering uterus.
Yes. I forgot about that. That's not one of the ones I wrote down as a reason to be.
But hysteria
admitted.
was probably in there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Unfriended insane.
Unfriended insane. Because at the time you were expected to take care of your own family members. And if you couldn't, then you had to pay for somebody to take care of your own family members. There was something called the poor law. And so if you didn't have anyone, then you were put in Western State Hospital where they took care of you.
So it was like, it was a state-run sort of...
Right.
Okay.
At first. And then it became something where even when families couldn't take care of their family members. Conditions that could land you at Western State Hospital, according to Charles Proke, a pioneer historian of early Washington. Hallucinations and alienations, aberrations and abstractions, phantasms and lunacy, dementia and delirium, hypochondria and kleptomania. But only the wealthy are subject to the last form of insanity. When developed in others, it's called petite or grand larceny. So if you're rich, you have a mental illness, and if you're poor, you are a criminal.
I see. It's interesting how that happens.
Others are monomaniacs and anglomaniacs, hysteria, and various morbid nervous disorders, the victims of which are regarded as more or less demented.
I only grasped about 5 of those terms.
Right? There was a bunch of rhymes. I thought
that was interesting. He grouped them in really rhyme.
I took a direct quote. I kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit so we could end with the part about the grand larceny, but I wanted to stick to the direct quote.
So a bunch of made-up sounding words is how you get put into this place.
Pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Anything. If you weren't normal, you got put here.
Or not just you're not normal. If your family perceives you as being not normal, which I don't know if you're going to get into this, but if a woman is getting uppity, she can be... There was a time where if her husband thought that she was being willful, could put her in a quote unquote insane asylum.
This happened. No, you're not jumping
Okay.
ahead. This did happen to, well, I won't name them, but they're in Keith's family.
Oh no.
He would lock her up every time he was done with her.
Oh, that's awful.
I mean, she did, apparently, the story goes, hit him with a frying pan at the top of the stairs and left him at the bottom for 2 days. So... Anyway,
did he deserve it? That's the question.
Probably. More than likely.
Is it just suck that she didn't finish the job?
Yeah. I think they were both in need of Western State Hospital.
Oh, gosh.
To be honest. But anyway, so Western State Hospital sounds noble, right? Well, in theory, in the beginning, it was. But the reality... That's where things start to get a little bit murky. The hospital was built during a time when mental health care was, let's say, experimental at best. Mm-hmm. The treatments ranged from mildly peculiar to downright terrifying.
Drill a hole in your head and then stick an ice pick in that brain.
Yes, exactly. Lobotomies. Hydrotherapy was really just a nice name for forced ice baths. Electroshock therapy treatments, straitjackets, and lobotomies. There are reports of sexual abuse and torture.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of it.
Oh,
it was
God.
just, as I really went into the research, it was just, the place was standard for that.
Which really helps your mental health.
Right. Patients and staff doing it. So, so yeah, not exactly your typical day at the spa.
No. I mean, hydrotherapy makes it sound like you're going to go
Right?
sit in a hot tub,
Right? I was like,
maybe have a nice sauna.
because I was reading various things and one just referred to it as hydrotherapy. And I'm like, oh, isn't that a nice term
Right.
for
Yeah.
being tortured in an ice bath?
I know. I more think of it as like, are you getting like a water jet massage? That sounds nice.
Yeah,
I'd like some hydrotherapy.
There was also insulin therapy. So they would give large doses of insulin. So you'd crash the blood sugar and it would induce convulsions. And the thought was that it would shock the brain back to
Oh my
responding
God.
normally. Right? How terrifying.
I wonder how many people died from that.
Right. That's what I was thinking because
Because that's a way you can murder somebody.
100%. Well, in being an ICU nurse, like we do what we call insulin drip. So it's continuously going in and we have to check your blood glucose frequently, usually hourly, and our machines pick it up right away. And I'm just imagining back in this time, like who was checking that? How were they checking that number in real time? I'm sure it wasn't coming back right away.
Right. Well, and if they're doing it for the purpose of getting you to convulsions,
Right. You're on death's door.
then yeah, how
That's
do they?
the next
right.
step. But what's truly fascinating is how this utopian dream, where those who could not care for themselves were cared for, quickly turned into something out of a Gothic novel. The hospital expanded rapidly, with new buildings popping up to accommodate the ever-growing number of patients. By the 20th century, Western State Hospital had become the largest mental institution in Washington State, housing thousands of patients. And that, my friends, is where the real story begins.
Oof.
Now, let's fast forward to the 1930s and 40s, a period that is described as Western State's scandal era, which I think is hilarious because I think
Scandal era. It's all
I think
scandal.
that the whole existence is an era. I mean, it's the scandal. So yeah,
Right.
the whole, but whatever, it's described as the scandal era. Picture this, an overcrowded institution, now over 2,000 patients, it was set up for 800,
Oh wow.
overworked staff, and a system that was, well, falling apart at the seams. And it's no surprise that the cracks began to show. And boy, did they. One of the most infamous scandals involved the mysterious disappearance of patients. Yep, they just disappeared.
What?
People just up and vanished. The hospital's administration tried to brush this off as patients escaping, but rumors started to circulate about more sinister activities.
There's those freshly dug graves out back.
There were whispers of patients being mistreated, experimental procedures gone wrong, and even murder. People entering the hospital would simply disappear. Do you remember back on episode 28, Starvation Heights and Linda Hazard?
Yes.
Kind of the same stuff. She would take you in and then people would disappear.
And she'd be like, oh, no, they're just convalescing. They don't want to talk to you.
Yes, exactly.
And they were dead and she was wearing their clothes and jewelry.
And E.R. Butterworth in episode 30 as well. So I think, and this is all the same era. So they're taking people and stealing and people go missing and they're taking advantage of people for money.
Crazy.
Greed.
Yeah, that is weird. Like, what is it about that time that just made it more sinister?
Yeah, I think
You know what?
It's just not civilized yet.
Well, also during Prohibition. Can't
Oh,
get a legal drink.
yeah,
You go a little
yeah.
crazy.
People entering the hospital would simply disappear. Families would call or visit and find that their loved ones were not there, or even maybe that there was no record of them having even been there.
They're like, John Smith who?
Right. No, never been a patient here.
Don't know
Even
what
though
you're
you
talking about.
may have visited them there before. They're saying that person never
Oh,
existed.
so they were gaslighting them too.
Yep. But some of those missing patients may have been found. Stay tuned. Dun, dun, dun. But before we get into the sordid details, we need to disappear for a bit on our own so that you can hear from our mentally healthy sponsors. I mean, they sponsored us, right? Welcome back. Thank you for sticking around. And by the way, if you would like to listen to our episodes ad-free, consider joining our Patreon, where you will get ad-free episodes, bonus content, become smarter, funnier, and all around happier.
And better looking too, I bet.
Well, yeah, it's a full bonus package.
Absolutely.
You really get your money's worth. Just head on over to our website at rainydayrabbitholes.com and you can sign up. Back to our story. And now we're going to talk about the so-called forgotten wards. There were parts of the hospital where the most challenging and severe cases were housed, far away from the prying eyes of the public, and the conditions of these wards were reportedly horrendous, with patients subjected to inhumane treatments and torture.
Ugh, I can imagine.
It's said that some of these wards were so hidden, even the staff weren't entirely sure who was in them or how they got there or why.
Oh my gosh.
And the scandals didn't stop there. In the 1950s, Western State Hospital made headlines again when it was revealed that several of its staff members had been embezzling funds.
Oh, fun.
So this is where we're like Starvation Heights and E.R. Butterworth again, because they also stole funds.
Yeah.
These funds were supposed to go towards patient care, and instead, these dollars lined the pockets of a few greedy individuals, further deteriorating the already dire conditions at that hospital.
Do you know if this was doctors, or does it say anything about...
Yeah, it's the officials that were running the hospital.
Oh.
Anybody who had...
So it was the administration?
Yep, administration. Nice. Taking their cut above the paycheck.
Nice.
As if this wasn't enough to put Western State Hospital on the map, let's talk about some of its most famous and infamous patients. You see, for an institution with such a notorious reputation, it's no surprise that it attracted some equally notorious residents. Perhaps one of the most well-known patients was Mary L. Leonard, often called Queen Mary. She was committed in the 1920s, and Mary was a wealthy socialite from Seattle who became convinced that she was a member of the European royalty. After a series of bizarre incidents involving attempts to reclaim her throne,
she staged a coup.
She was sent to Western State Hospital. Her story became something of a legend, with many wondering if she truly believed her delusions or if this was all an elaborate act. So when I looked her up, like in newspapers.com and Google searches and historylink.org, she doesn't really pop up as a patient, which kind of makes sense. She does pop up in the census, her vital statistics, her marriage shows up, her property that they own shows up, lots of invitations to social events. So she was a socialite, but they do not mention anywhere where she is admitted to Western State Hospital, which is, of the time, normal. Nobody discussed it. It was hidden.
Sure.
She was probably off visiting someone. She wasn't at the hospital.
Yeah, they would have said, oh, she's visiting relatives in Maine.
Right.
And how would you know?
And how would you know?
The only way...
There was no social media. You couldn't track her down. You couldn't sleuth her.
And was this in the 50s?
Yes,
Queen Mary?
50s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, for her, no. She was 1920s.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, not everybody has a phone still in the 1920s.
Absolutely.
So your telegram or snail mail.
Right.
You know, because phones were still a little bit of a luxury even at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's the case of Dr. William Chester Minor, a former surgeon who, after serving in the American Civil War, descended into madness. Minor was plagued with delusions and paranoia, which led to a tragic shooting in New York State.
PTSD.
Yeah.
Otherwise known
Shell
these
shock.
days as PTSD.
He was eventually declared insane and sent all the way across the country to Western State Hospital.
Really helpful.
But here's a twist. While he was confined, Minor became one of the most prolific contributors to the Oxford English Dictionary. He used his time wisely. He made 10,000 entries into the 16th edition.
Oh, wow.
There is a book written by Simon Winchester called The Professor and the Madman, if you're interested in learning more about Dr. William Chester Minor.
What a great name.
Right? What a story. Like he's a surgeon. He's a Civil War soldier. He made 10,000 entries into the Oxford Dictionary.
Wow.
And he was committed for being mentally insane.
She probably just had PTSD.
Right. Yeah. And here's one that I think is just completely made up. I went in search of tales on social media sites. And this one was on Reddit, but I cannot find...
I never go to Reddit when I'm researching and something comes up in Reddit. I'm just going to ignore it because I'm like, eh.
Oh, it's a great place to get your starters. So someone told this tale, but I found absolutely nothing. And it is way too good of a tale to have absolutely no details.
Okay, so
this is a story starter.
Yes. So caveat,
write your own tale.
This is probably made up, but it's a good story.
Completely made up. I'm sure of it. George J. Miller was convicted of murdering his wife in the 1930s, but was declared insane and sent to Western State Hospital. His case became media sensation and newspapers dubbing him the Mad Butcher of Tacoma, which there is no reference anywhere, newspapers.com, anywhere, Google, nothing. Okay. There's no Mad Butcher of Tacoma.
So this is from somebody's book.
There's no way this is real because
There would be something. If the papers dubbed him the Mad Butcher
Right.
of Tacoma, if you put in the Mad Butcher of Tacoma, that
Right.
would come up somewhere.
Even in 1930,
Right.
I was very focused and then also broad, and it never came up anywhere. There's Mad Butchers all over the country, though.
It's a very popular moniker.
Yeah. Despite the heinous crime, Miller was released in just a few years due to the claims that his improved mental condition, a decision that sparked outrage and fear amongst the community. It's quite a detailed tale with absolutely no facts to back it up.
I can make up that story too.
But I mean, this hospital is very, very old, and there are a lot of stories. So not uncommon to hear these. There's a lot out there that's not substantiated. Well, and it's difficult to substantiate most things because they hid things. It wasn't documented well. History gets buried. Now, the most famous patient to spend time at Western State Hospital, and this is substantiated, is actress Frances Farmer. She was a Seattle native who appeared in over a dozen films with Paramount Pictures. Her mental health struggles and subsequent stay at Western State Hospital have become a story on its own. There's a lot of lore around her stay, some true and some for dramatization. In true rabbit hole fashion, this one took us down an entirely different tunnel. So I'm sorry to say, but I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger for this one.
Oh, boy.
Frances Farmer is going to get her own episode, so stay tuned to learn about Frances Farmer.
Well deserved.
Yes, it is. She's quite a character. Now, listeners, it's time to turn our attention to a place that's just as haunting as the hospital itself. Fort Steilacoom Cemetery. Located near the hospital grounds, this cemetery was the final resting place for many of the hospital's former patients. If you died as a patient, you were buried in this cemetery. This place has a story all of its own. It's a story of neglect, forgotten souls, and unmarked graves, and some heroes. Now, if you're looking at cemeteries for Western State, there's actually two.
Okay.
This one's not on the Western State property. It's across, as you know, because we've been there.
Right.
The one on the property is actually from when it was a military base. And so those are soldiers. And,
Okay.
The cemetery, established in the late 19th century, was used to bury patients who died at the hospital, many of whom had no family or means to claim their bodies. In its early years, the cemetery was relatively well maintained, with simple markers placed on the head of each grave. In order to maintain privacy for their families, the markers only contained numbers, no names, no dates of birth or death, no identifying information. Yes, Shay?
So if you had a family member that was there and died, could you claim their body and bury them somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you could bury some of your loved ones on that property there are family members that are buried with a patient who's buried there.
Oh, so like if somebody's wife was in there and died, and then he would be like, I want to be buried with her when I die. Okay.
Yep.
That's really
there's
sad.
two babies. One was stillborn. One was only, I think, 2 days old. And they are in there. They were born to patients, patients gave birth to them. There's a 2-year-old that passed away.
I wonder if those were children of rape.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say. And then the oldest person in there was 103.
103.
103.
Wow.
I don't want to be 103 living at Western State.
No, that sounds terrible.
As the years went on, and as the hospital became overcrowded and underfunded, the cemetery fell into disrepair. By the mid-20th century, many of the original grave markers had been lost or destroyed, leaving hundreds of graves unmarked and their occupants forgotten. Some of these markers were made of wood, so they just decayed over time and you can't see them anymore, while others just simply got overgrown. The cemetery became so overgrown, and the stories of those buried faded into obscurity.
And they didn't keep a map of graves. Oh, they did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's estimated that there are over 3,000 people buried on Fort Steilacoom Cemetery, yet only a fraction of those graves are marked.
Oh, wow.
So there is a map, and there's just numbers that correlate to a patient.
Okay.
So when you look at the map, it's just numbers.
Okay. But a lot of the markers are gone, so it's hard to
So they had to try and look at the map and try to find that marker or find that grave site with no marker based off of the map.
Yikes. I wonder if they did any burying people on top of other people that weren't related. Just because
with those missing people, you just don't know. You know what I mean? It's
they
a good way to hide them
with somebody else's grave. Yeah, I think that used to be a way to hide bodies pretty regularly too. Is you would go and bury somebody in somebody else's fresh grave because nobody would question the freshly dug up ground of somebody who had just been buried.
I saw another thing about somebody recommended to somebody else or told them to go dig a grave, put the body in it, and then kill a dog and put it on top so that people wouldn't know. They would just think it was a dog on top.
So guys, first off, you can murder somebody with insulin.
Yeah. We're giving lots of good tips today. I think we're going to end up at Winston State Hospital. Oh gosh, that's so bad.
I don't know who I was talking to with when I for some reason brought up like, yeah, I mean, have you not thought about how you would dispose of a body?
No, oh my gosh, is that something you do? Like Keith does this all the time. I'm like, what are you like? If I didn't know you, I would be worried that I was married to like a killer. You're always worried. I guess it was a thing him and his dad used to do for fun. Oh, no.
See, this is another thing Keith and I have.
Yes, that's why I was like, what?
Well, when you watch these true crime shows and somebody will have gotten caught because of how they disposed of the body or even how they murdered somebody.
Right.
And I'm like, I could do it better.
Or their behavior after, their actions after. It's just, yes.
Yeah, when you move in with your mistress and immediately like the day after your wife gets murdered,
right,
or dies,
she's wearing her clothes.
Yeah, and you immediately apply for the life insurance policy that you took out on her 4 months ago.
I'm so eager for the money.
Right.
Should have killed her sooner.
Look, you got to play the long game. You plant a poison garden. You have to plan your murder for 10 years minimum.
Yeah. Long poison.
Exactly. Well, you plant your poison garden so that you just become an eccentric.
Yeah.
You're just that lady who has a fancy poison garden. And then you just slowly poison whoever it is. And
so I'm not very knowledgeable of plants. And if I were to see them, I wouldn't know what they were. And you have this gorgeous backyard full of plants. And now I'm kind of concerned that you actually do have a poison garden. I don't know what's out there.
That's true. Maybe
some things are obvious, like pumpkins, but like the rest, I don't know.
No, I would be letting the foxglove grow in my yard if I really wanted to.
I do that because they're weeds and I don't take...
Well, they're pretty weeds, though.
They are. They're
pretty deadly weeds.
I purposely don't leave them. I mean, don't take care of them. It's estimated that over 3,000 people are buried in Fort Steilacoom Cemetery, yet only a fraction of those graves are marked. Among those resting in unmarked graves are patients who died of illness, those who succumbed to harsh treatments of time, and even those who were involved in the hospital's darker scandals. Alleged murder.
The insulin deaths.
Right.
There's probably a lot of those.
There has to be.
Or
There's
lobotomy issues.
No way they managed that.
Well, imagine too, even in the 50s, I think that they didn't have the best sterilization techniques.
Right.
Doing a lobotomy is opening up
a
hole into your brain.
And it's so willy-nilly. It's not, I've assisted in brain surgeries.
Have you?
Yeah, neurosurgery, back and brain. And hearing how they went about this, I'm like, we use all this imaging. We use all these
they were just like, I'm just going to
tools.
cut you open and poke around.
Yeah, I'm just going to ram this rod in there and hope you survive.
I know, because if you're off by just a little bit,
right,
you're
with
dead
no imaging,
or a complete vegetable.
You're guessing.
Yeah. Then also, if everything's not sterile, you're introducing bacteria directly into the brain.
Yeah, and the blood-brain barrier is a whole different thing. And your nose is just full of all sorts of bacteria, which is supposed to be there.
I mean, was there a going up the nose?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the orbital one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the thinnest
so when
bone.
you do the... I'm poking a pin into my eye right now. Also the pin that was just in my nose. I'm going to get pink eye. I was like, it's a little bit wet. Gross. Giving myself pink eye. Okay. Okay, so when they go in through the orbital socket, so they're just basically like pushing your eyeball out of the way, right?
Yeah.
They're going in past here. Well, wouldn't that damage your tear ducts? Could that damage your optical nerve? Or is that they just like...
Yeah, the optical nerve is like right at the back of the eyeball, kind of deep. So then they're coming up and they're going into your frontal lobe. So they're not going
this way.
That direction.
But they could totally damage your tear ducts there too.
Oh, they could damage all sorts of things. Like I can't...
Like your brain.
I cannot...
I wonder how many people's eyeballs actually got punctured by accident.
And I cannot conceive how they did this and have people walk around like alive, first of all, and they weren't undamaged, but they're walking and they're
that
talking.
tale of the guy that got a railroad spike through his brain
Yes.
and lived
Yes,
for a
'cause it was
long
the
time.
right parts.
And then I guess, but it completely changed his personality.
Yeah.
Because of the part of the brain it went through. Like he went from being like a mild-mannered nice guy
Right.
to like a total monster.
Yep, that's your frontal lobe. That's why they do it with your. That's why they go there with the lobotomy.
Because that's personality and yikes.
Back to the story.
Sorry.
In early 2000s, Laura Lemke started a mission to remark the graves with names and dates of birth and death when they could find them. Gathering the information she needed was difficult, and as it was protected by law. You couldn't just hear about somebody's admission into a mental hospital. That was a secret. So she had petitioned the state, and in 2004, Washington State Governor Gary Locke signed a bill into law allowing access to these records so that she could go find out who these folks were and get their graves marked. Laurel started a foundation called Grave Concerns, and they are still working today to remark all those graves. There are only 16 graves left unmarked.
Wow.
Including 350 cremated individuals who were kept, I don't know, somewhere in the facility.
Wow.
And they took those and then turned them into 3 different vaults. They're all together, but right next to each other. And then there's a big slate, 3 slates actually, that cover it with everyone's names on them.
Well, yeah, because didn't we hear a story that there was just like a room in their storage room that had a bunch of like boxes of ashes?
Yes. And so they had to go through and identify those.
Wow.
And then
What a task.
figure out who the 350 were and then put them in.
Wow.
This has been a really large volunteer effort. She's not being paid. This is a volunteer effort, starting with just finding the graves where they had been overgrown and lost to the earth, where the markers had fallen or been or had decayed. Identifying these graves and gathering the information from old records to put together the patient and the grave was quite a bit of work. And some of those not being patients, that makes it difficult because there was no record of them being there, but they're family members. The markers are made from leftover marble donated to Grave Concerns by local suppliers. So they take extra marble from whatever projects they're working on. And these are nice. You'll have to go see them, or you can go to Pretty Gritty Tours YouTube, and they has a great episode on this entire process. But they're nice, thick pieces of marble. They cut them into little headstones and then engrave them and then give them to her. And I think, I can't remember if it's like 50. Once 50 of them are accumulated, then they go back to the cemetery and they start installing them.
Wow.
Or is it installing?
I feel like we should put a little ding, ding, ding every time we mention Pretty Gritty Tours.
Right? I know. I was so excited to do it one more time.
Every episode. Gotta mention.
Yep.
Hey, I work for him now.
Oh yeah, we gotta call that out. So back to the markers. So Grave Concerns. This task has been really, really monumental.
Yeah.
The cemetery stands as a stark reminder of the way society once treated its most vulnerable members, out of sight and out of mind.
Yeah.
And while the hospital has tried to move on from the troubled past, the cemetery remains a ghostly testament to the lives that were lost and forgotten. Grave Concerns is continuing their work today, but it has mostly been completed at Western State Hospital. So they are now working on other sites with similar stories.
That's awesome.
You can visit WSH, that's Western State Hospital, WSHgraveconcerns.com to see their story, what they're working on now, and even donate. Now, you didn't really think we'd go through this entire episode on Western State Hospital without mentioning ghosts, did you?
No.
Because, oh yes, this place is said to be haunted, like seriously haunted.
I mean, if ghosts were to exist, I would expect them to live at a place like this where there was so much abuse and pain and suffering.
So did you know that I actually spent time at Western State Hospital?
No.
I spent quite a bit of time in the not guilty by reason of insanity ward.
Like you were admitted?
Well,
what'd you do, Jody?
Well, I have a personal tale, but first, let's hear a tale from our sponsors.
Okay, fine, I'll wait.
Welcome back, and thank you for sticking around. And don't forget to go to rainydayrabitholes.com to sign up for our Patreon, where you become smarter, funnier, and happier. You also get ad-free episodes and bonus content.
And it's good bonus content.
Yeah, we're pretty funny.
See, I think so.
Oh, someone's not going to like that. We're laughing at ourselves. So, yes, I was at Western State Hospital in the not guilty by reason of insanity unit because I was there for my mental health clinicals for nursing school.
Okay, not admitted. I was
not admitted.
I did just give you my social security number. Do I need to worry?
Date of birth, address. I
know.
I've got it. So ghost stories are believed by almost everyone there, and they were actually part of our orientation and tour. So they discussed this while they were telling us about the facility, and on our tours, they would show us these things. And I actually remember these stories that are reported by many. I mean, I don't have personal experiences.
I was going to ask.
That they told these stories in orientation that I'm finding online. So they're prolific. They're out there.
Okay.
Many people report them. This building really lends to the story. It's old. Even the newest buildings are old. Clanking metal doors, echoing, paint peeling off of cement walls.
Gurneys.
Everything beige, light blue, hopeless feeling.
That weird green.
Yeah. And smells.
Oh, I'm sure. Like mildew and hopelessness.
Yeah. And just the old, everything.
Musty.
Old military cement.
Oh, yeah.
Hollow,
lifeless, soulless.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a level up from when Fort Worden. The batteries. I'm just kidding.
The abandoned batteries that are open to the elements and full of puddles of water and other things, probably.
No, but it's along that vibe, that vein.
That vibe, yeah. I did get a good freak out of myself there when we were in those batteries. For a non-believer, I certainly get myself worked up into a tizzy sometimes, don't I?
Yeah, yeah, we should head out for a night over at Western State Hospital. I keep saying we need to do these ghost things overnight, and we never do. It's because we're old. We want to go to bed at 9.
I know. And
I'm not going anywhere.
Free time. I need free time to do these things.
Right.
I have a podcast.
Well, and that's just the wrong time for free time because that's bedtime.
Exactly.
The hospital's eerie atmosphere has given rise to countless ghost stories and legends. One of the most famous tale, the Lady in White, and I did hear this when I was there for orientation, a spectral figure who is said to roam the old wards at night. Legend has it that she was a nurse who tragically took her own life after witnessing the horrors of this hospital. Now she's doomed to wander the halls forever searching for peace. No names. So I can't it's that nurse that took her life, dang. And then there's a ghost of a former patient who is said to be trapped in the hospital's old attic. This poor soul allegedly died after being subjected to one too many treatments. I wonder if it was insulin therapy or the lobotomy. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe it was the ice baths and they forgot him. And now he spends his eternity banging on the walls and ceilings as if he is trying to escape. Very sad. And so this is like an older area of the hospital where he's reported to be, and they took us through there.
Creepy.
And let's not forget Fort Steilacoom Cemetery. Many who have visited the cemetery have reported strange occurrences, unexplained cold spots, the feeling of being watched, and even the sound of disembodied voices. Some believe that the spirits of those buried in unmarked graves are restless, seeking recognition or closure that they never received in real life or in their life. I met some interesting folks while I was doing my clinicals there, and I totally anticipate them either already being a ghost there or someday being a ghost there.
Oh, really? That disturbed?
Yeah, that disturbed, and that, they were never leaving there.
Tragic.
Yeah, even, you get to go through therapies, and if you make progress, then they start giving you a little room and you can wander around a little bit more, and then eventually they take you on excursions, and then eventually you get to go spend a day or two with your family, maybe you get weekends, and then eventually this is how they get you home. And these poor patients have no trust for their own brain. I mean, they're there because what they thought was reality was not. And they made bad decisions or decisions based off what they thought was happening. Killing people, thinking they're defending themselves, So they would get just enough freedom where they felt safe, like they weren't on their own enough to go commit new crimes. And then once they were getting too much freedom, they would do something wrong so that they would get stuffed back in there, keeping them safe from making these, committing more crimes based off. They didn't trust their own brain, which is just, can you imagine?
Sad.
Yeah.
Really sad.
Back to the sad story.
The story became a real bummer.
A bummer. All right. So what's become of Western State Hospital today? Well, it's still standing, it's still in operation, and it's still making headlines, though unfortunately not always for the best reasons.
Oh boy.
Despite the advancements in mental health care, the hospital has struggled to shake off its troubled past, and the ghosts of its history seem to linger in more ways than one. In recent years, Western State Hospital has been plagued by a series of troubling incidents that have raised serious concerns about its safety and management. For instance, there have been multiple reports of patients escaping the facility, some of whom were considered dangerous. In 2016, 2 patients, one of whom was committed after being accused of a brutal murder, managed to escape the hospital. The incident sparked nationwide manhunt and highlighted the serious safety flaws within the institution. But the problems don't stop at escapes. There have been cases of patients committing violent crimes both inside and outside the hospital. And let's talk about leadership, or lack thereof. Western State Hospital has seen a revolving door of leadership in recent years.
Subject close and dear to your
It
heart.
is so dear to my heart.
Bad leadership.
Especially when I was reading this, it was like one of the medical directors came in and, went in to make changes, and he reported an unsafe workplace for himself. Like the staff there were it was hostile. They were hostile to him, and he would be trying to make changes, and he was unsafe at work.
Ugh, that's terrible.
It was that ingrained. Western State Hospital has seen a revolving door of leadership in recent years, with frequent changes in administration contributing to a sense of instability. Every time a new leader comes in, it's destabilizing,
Sure.
And so if they're constantly coming through it, changing, you just end up with no footing.
Right.
Reports of mismanagement and toxic work environments have only added to the chaos, making it difficult for the hospital to implement much needed reforms. So this medical director I was talking about, that's what that refers to. He just couldn't get anything done because he was battling his staff. To make matters worse, the hospital has faced significant funding cuts, further straining its resources. These cuts have led to staff shortages, reduced patient services, and general decline of quality of care. The loss of federal funding in 2018 was a major blow, with the Centers of Medicaid and Medicare Services pulling nearly $54 million in annual funding due to safety violations and substandard conditions.
Oh, geez.
So for those that don't know, if Medicare or Medicaid are paying the bills, you have to be credentialed by them. So they will come out and do surveys I don't know what mental health their schedule is, but for hospitals, we would do it every 2 years.
Okay.
And they have a list of things they come inspect, and they are in every corner of your hospital, and they are looking at every chart, and they're watching you take care of patients and your processes, and they are making sure you're following what's best practice.
So some oversight. That's nice.
Quite a bit. I mean, now some of their oversight is pretty silly, but that's bureaucracy for you.
Sure.
So they had been given many warnings and many opportunities to change what they were doing. They don't just come in and on their first swipe go, "Hey, we're going to shut you down, or we're not going to pay you anymore." Right. This is years to get here.
I was going to say, I'm sure this takes a couple of rounds of.
And think about this.
On a 2-year schedule, if it is indeed a 2-year schedule, like it probably took 3 rounds.
Right. Oh yeah. And now when you get on those corrective action schedules, then it's more often.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
$54 million of annual funding. Think about this, though.
So much
in
money.
addition to that, how many patients are there, do you think are under Regents, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, United?
Very few. It's going to be mostly Medicare.
So
Medicaid.
And so that is not just a big number, it's a large portion.
So what do you do with all those people?
The state's paying for it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So here's a couple quick stats that I thought were interesting. There's an average of 200 assaults per month.
Oh, my God.
These assaults are patient on patient,
okay,
patient on staff, staff on patient,
oh boy,
and staff on staff.
Oh, fun.
Right.
Sounds like a great place to work.
Another stat I found was between the years 2013 and 2016, there was over 185 escapes.
It's too many.
Right?
It's way too many.
Right? They're there for a reason.
What was the time frame
Especially
again?
right now. You're not there for depression and hysteria.
Right. What was the time frame again?
3 years, 2013 to 2016.
That's too many. That's way
Right.
too many.
And I think the reason I'm not finding those finding a lot of reports on it now is they probably improved a little bit. So it's not salacious and not out in the news. I'm not sure.
Well, and I wonder, so they probably have some sort of program that's kind of like a day release sort of thing.
Yes.
So I wonder how many of those were just like people walking away from their day release.
Oh,
That's
I'm
probably,
sure it's probably a lot. Yeah, that's got to be a lot.
majority of it. Yeah. I mean, I did watch the movie Girl Interrupted. So I do know what I'm talking about.
Yes, that is exactly that.
Wait, hold on. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I've actually seen that movie.
Oh my God. We need a bell. Ding, 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 ding. Jody's seen a movie I referred.
The whole movie.
You didn't fall asleep?
No.
Amazing.
It's a rare occasion. So, and in addition to all of that, there's been multiple lawsuits over the years, both from patients and staff members, and the government have all sued.
Oh, good grief.
They've been sued for assaults, mistreatments, lack of security, and a hostile work environment.
Mm-hmm.
Despite these challenges, efforts are still being made to turn things around. There's ongoing initiatives aimed at improving patient care, increasing security, and restoring public trust. Funding was approved of $613 million, and construction was started on an additional building. It was started in 2023 and should be completed between 2027 and 2029. That's a nice range, 2 years.
Sounds about right for Washington State. and it's going to go $1 billion over budget.
Well, and I can tell you from somebody who's done construction projects within hospitals, and you have all this red tape. You've got the Department of Health. You've got the building inspectors, electrical, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. You've got to get on their schedules, their inspections. I mean, this stuff just, sure. I'm voting for 2029. I'm betting on that.
Yep.
But the road ahead is steep, and Western State Hospital remains a symbol of ongoing struggles within the mental health care system, a reminder that while we've come a long way, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
Closing thoughts. There is so much more to tell about Western State Hospital. This really is just a touch and go. Mm-hmm. This entire episode, and there's just no way. You'd be bored to death, and it would take your entire day if I were to actually cover everything I discovered in here. So this is just a snapshot of overview of the things that go on there. As we bring this episode to a close, it's clear that Western State Hospital is more than just a building. It's a symbol of the struggles and triumphs in mental health care, the people who lived there and died within its walls, and the stories that continue to haunt the halls. From the beginnings as a utopian dream to its darkest scandals, from famous patients to forgotten souls and unmarked graves, and now to the modern challenges it faces, Western State Hospital's story is far from over. It's a place where history's shadows still linger and where the past and present collide in often unsettling ways. So next time you find yourself in Steilacoom, Washington, and you feel a chill in the air, just remember, you might be standing on ground where history's echoes still whisper. It could be a ghost.
Or it's just, there's some vegetation holding in dampness and cold. Sorry. There's explanations for cold spots.
You know,
scientific.
One thing I didn't cover that I was just thinking about on campus is the Child Study Center, which is a deceiving title to me. It's a mental hospital for the mentally ill children that need committed. And I have chills over those.
Yeah.
Over that experience. I got to go there one day in my clinicals, and I will not forget. These are kids that need locked up, and that is something you just never forget seeing.
That's scary. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, guys, if you want to hear some more stories too that Jody didn't cover here about Western State Hospital and Old Steilacoom Fort State Park, whatever it is, it's some of those words combined. Pretty Gritty Tours does an amazing tour of the old fort, and they will do it at night with a lantern, and it's spooky. And maybe someday you'll see me leading that.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that while I was typing this up.
Yeah. Because, guys, I now am officially a tour guide.
A tour guide.
I'm not a full-fledged tour guide yet. I'm still a co-guide, but I will be leading more tours this coming weekend. Well, this will be out way after that, but you guys will be able to see me lead some tours in Tacoma for sure, like the Stadium High School tour, maybe the ghost tours in downtown Tacoma and Old Tacoma. So yeah, prettygrittytours.com. And you can always hit us up on our socials if you want to ask about the schedule. If you specifically want to take a tour with me, just reach out on our socials.
I went to her first tour and she was great. It was so much fun.
Surprise, surprise. I like to talk.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised you were great. I thought you were going to say surprise, surprise. I was great. No. Yes, she does. She does a great job.
It was awesome. Well, thank you. That was a good story. Ooh, spooky.
Spooky.
And
depressing.
Sad.
I know. You know, it's sad to me is that, I don't know, we don't do lobotomies like that anymore, but I don't think we've gotten much. We aren't curing it.
No.
Not even close. So managing it
No.
Barely.
Shove people full of medications.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very impactful. Lots of side effects. Medication.
Yep.
It's not.
Yep.
Yep.
Doesn't treat the underlying problems, just the symptoms.
Yep.
So
Sad.
Hello, my name is April, and I'm the host of the history podcast, Dorky. Dorky is 2 words, door and key. It's a play on the word dorky, which is really fitting because I'm a dork who loves to talk about history and random events and people from history. So come join me as I dive into these events and people. From Ötzi the Iceman to Studio 54, I cover it all in a way that's easy to consume. Get ready to hear a new and different perspective and gain a deeper understanding of the past while having some fun along the way. Welcome to Dorky. You can find and subscribe to Dorky anywhere you listen to podcasts, and Dorky is on all social medias as DorkyPod, so be sure to check all of that out as well. Talk to you soon, friends.
well, guys, after that bummer of a story, we hope you'll come back and listen.
We just blew smoke up your arse.
that was awesome. If you'd like to hear us blow more smoke up your arse, you can head on over to our website, rainydayrabitholes.com. That's where you can see all of our episodes. And if you want to get this episode ad-free, you just need to join our Patreon. So we have a $5 a month level, $10 where you get more, and $20 where you get everything, including pictures of Jody's boobs.
No!
Oh, no, I'm not allowed to advertise that.
Oh, Keith's going to be so mad at you.
Okay, and pictures of Jody's feet.
He's like, even after I die, you better not do anything like that.
Pictures of Keith's boobs.
Yes.
There we go.
The boobs of a Bigfoot.
We'll do a really close up on one of his nipples so you can't quite tell what
You
it is.
have to get really close. He has tiny nipples.
Oh, now he's going to be mad at you.
I had to deflect for you.
And remember, you can always find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. But you can go to our website for links to everything. That's where everything is. You can always email us, Shea at rainydayrabitholes.com, or reach out on the socials. I forgot what I was saying, so I'm going to quit here. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. See you next time.
See you down the rabbit hole.
All right, crazy idea. Let's do a girls' weekend, and we'll stick some vaginal weed suppositories up our hoo-has and see what happens.
Come back later. We'll have a report.
Okay, all right.
Shea and Jody's girls' weekend. Vaginal THC.